Thanks for coming, everyone, today. So this event's on AI support specifically for trainee teachers and ECTs. So we're going to try and keep the session around 40 minutes today with time for questions at the end. Throughout the session, our team will provide links to related resources, blogs, podcasts in the chat for you, so you can grab them and bookmark them as we go. But there will also be a reflections document afterwards. And I believe you get a certificate and a mug for coming today. Is that right?
You get a certificate and you will receive a mug if you take the time to fill in the feedback form. Yeah.
That's well worth it, because Twinkl mugs are like gold dust. We don't even have. Yeah. So I'll be very jealous of you today if you get a Twinkl mug. So we're going to try and cover quite a lot of ground today. So we'll kind of give an overview of AI, artificial intelligence in education at the moment, some of the tools that are out there. We'll talk about Twinkl's AI tool. We'll talk about two specific ways AI could support trainee teachers. So that's with planning and personal statements. Then I'll talk about using AI tools wisely, the limitations of AI, why it's important to teach students about AI and what you might want to cover. And then we'll look briefly at the end at the future of AI in teaching and kind of sum up with some key points. So if you want to ask questions throughout, please do drop them in the chat. We're very lucky today because we have John Park with us, who is Twinkl's head of AI. Is that your job title, John? Have I got that right?
AI product owner.
AI product owner.
I like head of AI. It sounds very important, doesn't it? Yes, no, I like that. Yeah, AI product owner is the official job title.
Yeah, so John knows a lot more than us on AI, so you might be hearing John's views on several of the slides as well. And I really want to thank him for coming today, because obviously having someone much more knowledgeable than us is going to really help the chat. Right, so I think we could get going. So I'll just introduce myself. So my name's Simeon, and I was a teacher for around 8 years. Before that, I was a one-to-one TA, and before that, I was a peripatetic music teacher. So I was in education for around 15 years, and most of my family are educators in some sense. So yeah, it's kind of in my blood. And once I had children of my own, I decided I wanted to spend more time at home. So I was very happy to come and work for Twinkl and join the trainee teachers and ECTs team, where I run a few different social media channels. I run our Pinterest and our Twitter primarily. I also host a monthly podcast for us discussing trainee teacher and ECT issues. And John's actually appeared on that podcast, and I think you'll get the link to that episode later. And I also create resources and do pretty much anything else they need me to do. So it's a varied job and I really enjoy it. And basically I view my job as whatever I can do to help you feel more confident at the start of your teaching career. And with us today, we also have our new team member, Harriet.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. So I was a teacher for 7 years, and I'm really passionate about early years education, and I taught across the early years foundation stage in nursery and reception. So I've only recently just joined Twinkl in the trainee teachers and ECT team as the university outreach partner. So my role is to work with universities and training providers to support trainee teachers on their way to becoming the next generation of educators. So our job, like Simeon said, is to offer support, quality resources to help boost your confidence and succeed in your teacher training. So we're going to start off by looking at AI in education. The term is everywhere at the moment, and the education sector is no exception. So in this session, we're going to explore AI within the education sector and the ways it can be used to support learning. So during London Tech Week back in June, the Education Secretary said that AI would transform the world around us. And she went on to say that the recent development in AI has led to an increased focus on its potential role in education, calling it a game changer. The UNESCO described AI as having the potential to address some of the biggest challenges in education today. So the DfE decided to call for evidence on how AI is currently being used in education. So teachers, school leaders and other educators were asked to share their views in order for the DfE to explore the opportunities this technology presents for education. So this will help to understand the concerns of experts and educators too. And these results will be published later this year on the Gov website. This information will then be used to inform future policy work in addition to continued engagement with education and edtech sectors. So I thought it was a really good place to start by considering, by thinking about what factors we need to consider when using AI in education. So I'll just leave it a few minutes if you want to pop your ideas down in the chat, if anyone has any. So what factors do we need to consider when we're using AI in education?
I can't type in the chat, but I was thinking you need to look at how it will affect students in the long term. What will the long-term impacts be on their learning, and what do they need to learn to use AI effectively?
That's really interesting, Simeon. Thank you. I'll just leave it another few minutes, but understandably, if nobody's got anything, I can just move on. We'll cover a lot of the different factors during the session as well. So how do we need to prepare them for high school in terms of AI? Yeah. Whatever is used for in regards to workloads, it's important to remember it won't personalise to the individual needs. Absolutely. And we talk about that a little bit later on as well. It's really important to remember that. Yep, differentiation, what age is appropriate for. I think you can obviously type in an age range, but still it would be, you know, we need to be really considerate of it's, you know, what sort of information it's coming out with. Thank you for those. Louise, do you want to move on to the next slide, please? So I thought we'd start off as well having a look at the different AI tools. So there's various categories of them. So we've got chatbots, grammar checkers, image creation, note-taking, productivity, and we also have our own AI tool on our Twinkl website, which is called Ari AI. And Jonathan is going to talk to us a little bit about that in a moment. So if we can just move on to the next slide, please, Louise. Thank you. So it's a chatbot style assistant that can help with a wide variety of teaching tasks. And I'll hand over to Jonathan at this point for him to share with us his knowledge.
Yes, so Ari is the education chatbot for anything text related which AI can create. So lesson plans, report writers, curriculum summaries, comprehension texts and questions, anything you could think of where AI might help your workload, there's probably a prompt for it on Ari. And we have some fairly obscure ones. Talk to an animal is a popular one amongst children, but then also some things which are more focused on teaching and that as well. But I do also want to highlight that on the Ari page towards the bottom, you'll see a link to the AI Hub. And this is where we're increasingly working beyond text and introducing the more graphical elements. So a crossword and a word search generator, a PowerPoint quiz generator, talks of historical figure. These are all tools which use AI but go beyond text. And I had a quick look ahead. We're going to talk more about the opportunities and also the considerations with using these in your classroom later on.
Thank you, Jonathan. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Louise. So I thought, again, I really wanted to get your input on how you might have used AI already to support your own training journey, or whether it's in the classroom, if you're already on placement. So if you could put some ideas down in the chat, how have you used it? Have you used Ari AI before? Have you had a go and played around with that?
Again, I can't get to the chat, but I'll say I use Grammarly pretty regularly. I think I use it daily for most things, and I know that's AI supported.
Okay, so I'll just move on now, but feel free to keep putting your ideas down in the chat there. So we did a few experiments to see how AI could support trainee teachers. And the first thing we looked at was how and if it could help teachers with lesson planning. So obviously, as you know, planning well-structured lessons is a core part of the teacher standards, and it's an essential part of the job. However, it does take up a significant amount of time. So we conducted a quick experiment using Twinkl's ARI AI to explore how it could support the planning. So we asked if it could come up with a 6-week lesson overview, and also we wanted to see a lesson plan for week 1 from the overview. So it did produce a 6-week lesson plan overview and the individual lesson plans. Both were reasonably detailed, well structured, and on the face of it, they were accurate. So the only thing is, at times, the AI made suggestions that were not realistic for the children or the setting. So, for example, the first lesson, this was made using an earlier version of the AI tool, suggested that children form groups, carry out research, create a presentation of their findings, and present it to the class all in 20 minutes, which I think is quite a tall order for most adults, let alone the children. But still, you know, very helpful to have that base there. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Louise. And at this point, I'm going to hand back over to John, who can talk to us a little bit more about the pros and cons of using it in this way.
Yes, so I mean, obviously, AI is a great way to get started and save time. I think the 2 areas when using AI and as a teacher, think about it as getting the ball moving at the start and saving time in the long run. So often in new topics with lessons, you're not quite sure where to start. I remember particularly as an ECT, or NQT as it was when I did it, you don't really know where to start in a new topic. AI can get you that starting point, get the ball rolling. And the other thing it can do is get the ideas you have and type it up for you, work it into good language and save you time that way. The cons, obviously, it can lack creativity, which you as a teacher bring to the lesson. One of the comments and feedback I've seen from teachers using AI for ARI is safe, but unimaginative, or needed some changes, but generally really good start. And that's what you're going to get with AI at the moment. And secondly, anything generated by AI, you've already mentioned this in the comments, might not show an understanding of your pupils, the setting, and the resources. The thing I would say is AI is like anything. What you put in will affect what you put out. And if you give ARI information about your class, obviously suitably anonymized, you know, 2 children who need dyslexic support or 30 children in the class, if you can give it that information, it can work with it better. So that would be my tip using AI, is think about what you're giving it, but always check what you get out and read it through, because AI can have a wobble sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it, John. I actually tried that experiment again this morning with the lesson plan, and the one I got didn't have that timing issue with it, which was interesting to note. But it was quite a safe lesson plan, I'd say. But it was a perfectly workable plan. So I'm going to talk a bit about personal statements, because that's something I'm quite passionate about. Every year we allow people to send in their personal statements to us for feedback. So I've looked at a few hundred since I started working at Twinkl, and I know that writing a statement can be incredibly stressful for some trainees when they're in the middle of placements, if that's not their forte, if that's not something they're especially comfortable with. And obviously personal statements play a really important role for trainee teachers near the end of their training. They really help you secure a job. I've heard from several head teachers that that's the first thing they'll go to on a job application, is the personal statement. And they can also be very time consuming to write, especially if you have to change them for every school, which we recommend doing. And if you're not used to writing that kind of thing, it can be quite daunting. So we conducted another experiment with Twinkl's ARI AI to explore whether an AI could write a personal statement. And we asked the AI tool to write a personal statement for a trainee teacher nearing the end of their training, applying for their first teaching position. And the AI actually produced a 3-page personal statement that was very impressive. I was surprised by how good it was. A couple of things I pulled out was the standard of English was excellent. possibly better than your average personal statement, I might see. It followed a very clear structure. Where it fell down a bit for me is it incorporated educational vocabulary, and it was mostly correct, or at least it would seem correct if you didn't read too much into it. Once I started reading a bit more deeply, I kind of thought, hang on, that doesn't quite make sense there. So the tool varied its sentence openers. It used interesting and impactful language. It understood to some degree what it was writing, like the kind of language that would be appropriate for a statement. So at times it didn't use the vocabulary quite correctly, or there was just something about it that seemed off to me, that didn't seem quite human. It lacked a bit of imperfection almost, or just a bit of levity, a bit of lightness, I thought. So after I saw that, I thought, well, would I recommend someone using AI to write a personal statement? And the answer I came to was no, because the key word is it's a personal statement. It's really personal to you. It's supposed to give your future employer an idea of who you are. But I did think it could give you an excellent starting point. So this tool might be able to provide a good example you could work off, or it could give you a structure that would help, because quite often people get a bit stuck in personal statements with the structure and end up repeating things as opposed to hitting every point on the job specification. So I think an AI generated personal statement could save you time, potentially, if you were using it in that way as a basis to work off, but it can't truly capture your personality and your individual experiences and your voice. And the content the AI produced wouldn't contain real world examples of things that had happened to you in class that would perhaps make you stand out, because early in their careers, teachers often have very similar experiences. So it's about being able to give those small examples of something you did in class that was different or made you stand out, or something you brought to the school that they hadn't had before that can really make you stand out from the other candidates. If everyone's using AI statements, head teachers are going to have a pool of mostly the same kind of thing.
Simeon, I just wanted to add on there when you were saying about it, not really reflecting the trainee's personal voice, or the person's personal voice that is using it. And I think that's really important, because obviously if you did, receive an invitation to go for an interview, and then during the interview you sounded very different, that might be quite, to the interviewer, the employer, they might be, quite surprised at how the difference between them, and they might even ask you about it,
Yeah, I think so, and I think employers are going to become very attuned to this quite quickly. I cover that in a little bit, but I think it is something employers are going to watch out for. And if you're a head teacher and you have 30 or 40 personal statements to read through, you're naturally going to gravitate towards the one that sounds a bit different, a bit more expressive, a bit more exciting. And my bet would be that would be the human statement, even if it wasn't quite as perfect as the others. So AI is great for ideation and to save you time. It can't really be a substitute for human knowledge and nuance, but it can provide you inspiration for things. It can be very useful for that. So one of the key skills taught and assessed in teacher training is the ability to plan a lesson, which Harriet talked about. And while using AI to do this, it might save you time. It also means that you miss out on the practice and experience of planning a lesson yourself, which is a skill you will need as you teach. And if you practice it, you will get better at it, and then it will take you less time. So I can kind of see both sides of the argument there. I think by practicing it yourself, you will get better, and that will save you time. But also by using AI as a base and checking it, you will save yourself time. So it really depends what you want to do. Me personally, I'd want to develop the skill first, and then it's there if I need it. I don't know, John and Harriet, how you feel about that one.
Yeah, we talked about this in our podcast, actually, didn't we? That
Yeah.
one of the opportunities and pressures of being a trainee or an ECT is that you learn the skill of planning a lesson. Now, AI can plan a lesson, but you, as an ECT, you still want to practice that skill and build that in yourself. There are ways to do that with AI. I mean, one thought I've had since is plan a lesson manually, ask AI to plan a lesson, compare the two.
Oh, that's a good idea.
What are you doing different from AI, and is it better? Because sometimes it will be, but sometimes, particularly in the early years, AI will come up with a really obvious answer and you think, oh, I should have done that. Now, often your mentor or whoever can also be doing this, but from when I was an NQT, AI will certainly be more available more of the time than my mentor was.
Yeah, that's true. And I really like that. It's almost a way of checking your lesson. Right. So, John, I'd like to ask you about this as well, because I've put here that most AI tools only extend up to about September 2021 in terms of the information they have. Is that about right?
That is still correct. A lot of AI tools seem to be quietly updating that date, but still very much saying that they're sticking to September 21 because that's when they can do it. Linked to that, AI isn't Google, and AI can get facts wrong. The AI is predicting the next series of words or the next series of letters in a text, doing it very, very well. Which means that for general things, it's going to get it right. For specific things, it might get it wrong. The example I use is that if you ask AI what happened in 1066, it will tell you about the Battle of Hastings. If you ask it what happened in Lincolnshire in 1642, it will look believable and it will absolutely be wrong. So just be aware of that with AI, and I think we'll talk about this just a bit later on. You need to fact check it if you're using it for facts.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'll do a couple more limitations and then we'll talk about actually kind of using it in the classroom and what to consider with students, because I think that's really important. So obviously there's a bit of an ethical question when it comes to using text you haven't written yourself. So for example, if you are using AI to help you write a job application, could you be giving your future employer an inaccurate idea of what you can do, especially if the AI's writing ability is very different to your own, or the language it uses is very different to how you would express things? Your teacher training is there for you to learn and develop skills, and I'd also say this for the ECT period, you'll need throughout your entire career. So while AI can provide an excellent foundation or a model for many tasks you may need to undertake, such as writing lesson plans or statements, you need to make sure you're not relying on them to do the work. Although I do love John's idea of having a go yourself, having a look at an AI version and then seeing how yours could be improved. I think that's a really nice way of using it. And then just being aware of the lack of nuance, that AI tools can only present information, not interpret it. And they might give you responses that could be inappropriate or misleading, depending on the prompts that have been given. As John said, it's a lot of what you put in will determine what you get out. Okay.
Move on. Sorry, Simeon. I just wanted to add on earlier when we were talking about the lesson plans and if we were using it for planning, and then it follows on a little bit from what you were just talking about there. It's really important, I think, personally, to see AI as ideation, like you said earlier, and use it as a starting point, because sometimes it's just quite difficult to get going with something. And even just almost using it as like a starting off point, having a little conversation with it, and seeing what ideas it comes up with. Sometimes it then jogs your own thinking process, and you can come up with your own ideas that way. But of course, always then consider your children, the resources you've got, the setting you're in, the school you're in, and the age and stage of the development of the children.
Yeah, it could be really useful on those days you're not just tired, but you're teacher tired, and you still need to plan a lesson that evening. You know, and you need some ideas.
Can I just add to that?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just to absolutely agree with all of that, but also to add that AI is a tool which can support your teaching. It's not a replacement for you as a teacher, and it never will be. Use it as a starting point. Use it sometimes as a finishing point. I have these ideas. These just get me to that point where it looks like a lesson plan, and then I can take it from there. Always check it, but also trust your judgment and see it as a tool. I remember when interactive whiteboards came into the classroom, teachers were freaked that they'd lose the skill of how to teach, and actually it just gave them an extra tool. So use it, use your judgment, check it, but don't let these limitations put you off from trying it, because it can save you time if you use it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the main things teachers need at the minute is something that will save time and reduce workload. So yeah, I really don't want to put anyone off. So I know I've gone pretty heavy on the risks here. So, but yeah, I do think there is a lot of upside to AI. I'll just touch on one more thing here. So as I said, there are now, the software is being developed that can detect if something has been written by AI. So I think it's really important that if you're applying for a job or a university position or something, you bear that in mind, and that you let your students know that that's the case, because I would bet that future employers will probably start using that kind of software. I don't know how you feel about that, John, if you think that's likely to happen.
It is. It's also worth bearing in mind that most of this software isn't reliable yet, but yeah. I expect it will be soon. This is very much at the early days of these. At the moment, it's returning a lot of false positives or false negatives, but it will get better. AI is improving daily, and you can't rely on it not working, because one day it will.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about teaching students about AI, because that's really important. So just a couple of questions for the group, really. What do you think we should be telling students about AI? What do you think we need to teach them? What do they really need to know? And I apologize because I'm presenting, I can't see the chat. So if someone wouldn't mind reading out a question, if there is one.
I don't mind reading them out there, Simeon, when people pop them in. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'll give you a couple of minutes because I know I've waffled on for a while. So yeah, if you want to have a think about what we should teach students, that would be really helpful.
Just while we're waiting for if any messages come in the chat there, I just thought it was quite interesting. I'm not in class obviously anymore. I don't teach at the moment, but I think it'd be really interesting to speak with the children about it now, because it's going to be part of their life. And it's going to, it's going to get more advanced and improve more, and it's probably going to become good. I mean, hopefully John will be able to help us out with that AI of the future. But it was really interesting that they're going to be able to see that process and to get their ideas on it. What do they think it's going to be like in the future? What could it help with? They might be one day doing that job.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know if they thought it was fair or unfair to use AI for certain things.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of pose some of those questions in a sort of philosophy or circle time sort of situation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, especially with older students.
Yeah, they can debate around the topic, what's like, I suppose, like we've done, look at the pros and cons of using it in different situations.
Yeah, well, it's a big philosophical thing, I think, AI and what it could do to change society for the better, and what some of the pitfalls might be.
We've got a question from or a comment from Megan. Thank you, Megan. I think it's important to remind them it's a starting point, as I feel it could be something people use instead of putting the work in. Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, well, I will see. I might have to, yeah, I knew that would happen. I might have to come out of this to remove that box. I didn't think this through. So I'm going to just delete that box. I thought I'd been so clever as well, but I didn't set up the get rid of the box. So let's just go back to slide.
Oh, Louise has also commented, thank you, Louisa. I think this links in with the false news online subject and the fact that we need to adopt a critical mind rather than just accepting what's written in front of them as true and accurate, instead of, accepting what's written in front of them is a true and accurate reflection of reality. That's really important, Louisa, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be increasingly problematic. I don't know if you've all seen some of those online kind of deep fake things where AI can take on the voice of a person and put it over a video of them speaking and make it look like they're saying something they're not. But I think that kind of thing will become increasingly prevalent and play into the whole fake news problem.
Yeah. We've also got another comment there that's A. Barron has said, and of course we need to be mindful of what is real or fake when AI is involved. Yeah, and be really, state what is real and what's not. Yeah. Oh, Miss Hughes has commented as well, saying they need to learn how to use AI carefully to ensure that they stay safe. E-safety needs updating for AI. Absolutely, Miss Hughes. I'd be interested to see if, what sort of things are happening now in class and with regards to AI, how teachers are currently speaking to children about it.
Yeah, me too.
Quickly add on to that. I think there's some really good points there. I think I was teaching in 2016 when fake news first hit the headlines, and suddenly we were teaching children about fake news. And we're going to have the same thing with AI plagiarism or AI fake, basically. What is real, what is not, what is AI? And I think as teachers, another aspect I think you will need to consider is safeguarding and emotional security for children. As they interact with this world, do they know, and we teach this already, can you trust the person you're speaking to at the other end? Are they who they say they are? Children could in the future very easily be talking to AI bots and even not know it's AI, or know it's AI and still form an emotional connection to that and face trouble with that. So it's not going away, as you say, it's going to become more prevalent. We need to be ahead of this, teaching children now so that we are prepared and they are prepared for any of the risks which are involved.
Just quickly, sorry, before we move on, just going back to Louisa's point there about adopting critical mind. Hopefully, if we teach our children these critical thinking skills, they're going to be able to, when presented with all of these different scenarios, they'll be able to employ those skills to help them through it all and decide, what's real, what's fake, what's going on around them, not to just believe it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to become increasingly important. And if you are stuck on that and you're not quite sure where to start, we do have a really good lesson on what AI can and can't do, with some nice ideas that I've got the link for, and I think the link will go in the chat as well. So I'd recommend having a look at that one. Right, so what about the flip side? What about your students using AI? So a common concern is, what if they start using AI to do all their work, their homework or their coursework? What should you do if that happens? I think that's very much going to be dependent on the teacher and the school. I suspect schools might even need to include in policy. I mean, for me, if I found my students were using AI on their homework or coursework, I think I'd definitely want to allow time to properly discuss that with them so they understand why that's inappropriate, not just because they got caught out, but they actually understand why that's wrong, and give them the chance to redo the work themselves. Because otherwise I think it will be a case of they get punished, they laugh it off, and then they probably do it again. I don't know, John and Harriet, how you both feel about that, but I think it's important to actually discuss it with them and give them a chance to put it right.
And also, as teachers, think about what you're giving as homework and what its point is. As a teacher, I know that I sometimes gave homework because I felt that parents expected homework, and then just found a sheet of questions, printed it off. That's going to become increasingly not useful for the purpose of it. So actually think about the homework you're giving them. What is its point? And if you're testing whether they know something, that probably should happen in class, where you can set the boundaries and parameters anyway, regardless of AI.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, I think that word nuance has come up a lot today. So I think that could be a really good opportunity to show them ways they could use AI to help them that you feel would be appropriate and fair, like checking spelling or that kind of thing. Or as John said, having a go themselves and then having a look at what an AI did and seeing if they can improve in some way. Okay, so John, this might be your key area here. So what do you think the future is going to be for AI in teaching?
I think we're going to see that idea of AI as a tool to support teachers rather than AI replacing teachers. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And I think we know that teaching requires personal connection with children, that human connection, and AI can't do it and won't do it in any way that humans can. We saw that over the pandemic. We could do remote teaching. We could set them all on tasks on computers and have AI generate tasks for them, but it's not the same as having that human connection. So AI will be a tool for teachers, getting you started, cutting down that workload, and we will find more and more ways to do that. As you say, it will change the job market students are moving into. This is something we're going to have to teach students. It may mean more choice of parents for homeschooling or tutoring, but more and more we're seeing actually that what AI can do for education is in itself an open question, which is changing based on the technology day by day.
Yeah, I completely agree. With the job market, I don't know if it's a law or a quote, but I liked it. I saw this a little while ago, that we tend to overestimate technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. So AI is very much a buzzword at the minute, and I think that buzz will die down somewhat maybe over the next couple of years, but I think it really will change things, especially with jobs. But we will see.
I'm excited to find out what's going to come out from the call from evidence as well that the DfE asked for, just to see whether they put anything in there of what's going to happen and how it's currently being used, and if we mean to be aware of anything. So it will hopefully form in future policy work as well. Yeah.
So I've pulled out some key points to finish, and then we'll just have time for questions at the end. Thank you so much for listening and joining in with your questions. So I thought the key points from today were that AI has the potential to be game-changing for many industries, including teaching. As Harriet's just said, the call for evidence that the DfE has launched will be published this autumn and should be very interesting. It's unlikely that AI will ever replace real teachers because of the importance of human relationships and connection. It is important that we teach students about AI and how it should be used. And AI may be a key way we teachers can reduce our workload in the coming years. It's just got to be used wisely and with a bit of nuance. And we should absolutely be careful to consider safeguarding.